Welcome to our Season of Discovery pre-launch meeting. One of them. We might do another one, but I'm going to post this publicly because we have nothing to hide. Just want people to know what our goals are, what the type of guild we're going to be, and kind of cover some things that we've been kind of mulling over and questioning. But I'm going to make this relatively quick. We're not going to talk specifics like strategy and stuff like that. That's a discussion for another time. It's a little bit more secretive, but this could be a little bit more like. What the hell are we doing inside, right? That's the point. What is our goal? So, took a little bit of notes here. I'll copy and paste it in the chat in one of the Discord channels, and you can review it at another time, or if people missed the meeting and blah, 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 you get it. But to start, okay, our core team. Our goal, as it always has been, is to go as hard as possible. That is what we're doing, even harder than Era, as we've explained before. It is, the requirement's going to be a little bit higher in a way, but reasonable. So that means since we're going hard and we don't know the game, our requirements will alter a little bit as we learn new things, right? We learn, okay, there's a new faction or something. We obviously can't say, I don't know, the Warbringers, you gotta get exalted with them. We don't know they exist. We don't know what these factions are that we might discover. So be ready for reasonable new requirements that will pop up as we play. We have to do that, right? So new things might pop up. So new reps, new grinds, or PvP oriented things. Anything that makes us better will be required. This will help us reduce the consume requirement as the guild increases their overall character strength. We want to make the game fun, and the more boring part of this game is, in my opinion, farming consumes and gold is the most boring part of the game. So if we can increase our strength overall by doing anything else, grinding, whatever it may be, ranking up, getting exalted, we're going to do that, right? We want to cut down the consumes, and as you guys saw in Era, we did that, right? When we first started, it was like we were using full consumes in MC because we were like literally greens, and BWL we had flasks running on even melee DPS, and using Titans, trying to just stay alive and get the raids done, and then we started dropping it, right? And the more people align with that, the easier that is to do, and it makes it more fun for everyone, because I think everyone likes that, oh shit, I don't need to use any flasks in BWL anymore. That's great, and then it becomes a lot easier. That's the goal, and we want everyone to pull their own strength, obviously, or pull their own weight, I suppose, because if they don't, it drags everyone else down, and it makes it harder to reach those states, right, where we can drop consumes. So that does not mean there won't be a consume requirement. This is regarding the last line about how we would drop consumes. There is one. It will be heavily enforced, but again, we will reduce and eventually eliminate consume requirements for raids just like we did in Era. We plan for a minimum of 2 core raid groups on Saturday. We may open a third raid with a more casual environment, but the days and times are not decided at this time. I'm really thinking that Saturday, 2 raids at different times for core. Like I'm going to do this in Eastern time, so I don't have to do math. 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. would be one raid. There'd be a 2-hour gap where there's no raid, and then it would be 8 p.m. to 1 a.m., just like we did in Era. I think there'd be 2 core raids. Interesting thing on that, I'm not sure. I didn't put it in this section, but I'll get to it. So if you plan to be core, again, please go as hard as you possibly can the first week of launch. We plan to be in the raid within 24 hours of launch, and we're looking for 10 players who will push hard, raid with competency, even though you will be up for probably over 24 hours at some point. So if you know yourself, like you're dead on hour 20, you can't play the game anymore, or you're falling asleep at the keyboard, you're probably not going to be one of the first 10. If you can be up 20, close to 30 hours, and you can play just fine, I'm looking for you. I'm looking for one of the 10 players needs to be you. A player who's going to be up, level to 25, and raid with like you got some sense and you're not falling asleep, because that's our goal. We want to clear that as fast as possible. The first raid will require nothing other than being level 25. Obviously PvE spec, because you shouldn't be picking PvP talents as you're leveling up anyway. PvE spec, and play like you got some damn sense. Other requirements will follow at a later time as everyone starts hitting 25 and we start forming the comp and stuff. Then we'll start talking requirements, what we're expecting and what you should be doing in the meantime. But the requirements will be a little bit lighter at 25 because people will probably be leveling a ton of characters to 25, which makes sense. And I think everyone should be doing that. We don't know what's going to happen at the end game. We don't know if it's like, hey, turns out we need 10 hunters. We don't know. So leveling alts highly supported. Really appreciate anyone that says, hey, I'm going to make a variety of stuff just in case some shit happens and I need to drop my warrior out of the raid and pull in a hunter as a core. Like, there'll be a lot of swapping, stuff like that. I'm sure that's going to happen where someone's like, hey, I'd like to switch off my shaman to a hunter. Is that cool? For the most part, I'm going to be like, yeah, let's mess around with it. You want to change your main early on, that's okay. But there probably will be a time when people always try to pull that stuff when we really can't. And we'll do our best to let people kind of move around a little bit, because there's so much changing, so much moving in this game in SOD that we don't know what to expect, right? Our goal is to be the absolute best guild in the server, and that what best means could vary from person to person, but best to me means the most stable. It is a fun raid environment. It is a successful raid requirement. People get their shit done, and you kick ass together. You have fun. That's pretty much what best means to me, and world bosses is going to be a focus, whether it's just our guild or it's a couple other guilds involved, as well as us, trying to camp these bosses, get these world bosses, stuff like that. But we want to offer the cleanest raids possible without sucking the fun out of the game. There's a fine line between that, right? So we always try to do that. And again, I reference again the BWL dropping consumes when it makes sense to do so, right? I know a lot of people like at the beginning like, bro, rogues popping Flask of Titans? Yeah, help me out here, please. It was, people wearing fucking greens. We had to do what we had to do to make sure our dude stayed alive. But then, as you saw, we dropped the requirement. Became chill, right? We're having fun, laughing it up in the easy raids. That's what we want. PvP. Absolute requirement for all core members, regardless of whether we require rank 14 going forward. That's going to be decided. That's to be decided. It's almost certain that we will require rank 14. Almost certain. And the only reason it's an almost and not a guarantee is because Blizzard can come around and say, hey, it's 1.2 million honor per week requirement. That's low to me. Okay, it's not low. That's a solid amount. That's a good amount of time you have to put in. But that's very difficult for a lot of people. 1.2 mil or 1 million. It's tough. I get it. We don't want to suck the fun out of the game for anyone, and we don't want to have ridiculous requirements that are just too hard for people to make, right? We don't want to set people up for failure. We set people up for success. That's what we're going to do. So Planet PvP hard, obviously Ashen Vale. We could expect more open world battlegrounds. It will be a requirement to be there and help the guild succeed in that and farm your own shit, because Blizzard already stated there will be pieces that are essentially BIS. Not every slot, but there will be pieces you have to get from Ashen Vale for each phase. On the topic of the multiple raids, I kind of should have did this a little bit earlier. We are permitting 2 mains for core raids. So let me reword that. 2 main characters for core members. This means you could have a main for early Saturday raid and a main for late Saturday raid. This does not mean you can swap which character you will bring whenever you feel like it. So character 1 is always in the early raid, character 2 is always in the late raid. We can make some exceptions and swaps as needed. So you can do that. That is not a requirement in any way. But if at any point you're like, I would love to raid on my warrior on the late raid, and maybe I'll heal in the early raid, or I want to be a rogue because you're a DPS greedy player like we know a lot of you guys are, and you'll play a rogue in the early raid, you'll play a warrior in the late raid, and maybe it's very easy to swap you around. We're like, hey, there's a Blade of Zolaman, I just made it up, and none of the rogues need it. Why don't you take your rogue and come to the first raid, and we'll move your warrior to the second one so we can give you the Blade of Zolaman that no one's going to compete with you with. There might be a little bit of movement like that to try to make things work when it comes to loot, but it won't be like players and stuff. But that being said, one of the nice benefits is maybe you only raid on one character and you can't make the late raid. That is something we can say, hey, I know you can't make the late raid. Maybe you have to go to some stupid wedding or some crap, but you can make the early raid. Okay, I'll ask one of the early dudes, hey, you mind sitting out or moving that character to the late raid and come raid with us late, and let's just let him raid early. So it gives us a little bit of room there to allow people to kind of swap around a little bit if they can't make one of the raids. Whether you're a core or a casual member, try to lock down your main relatively quickly. But like I said, we're giving a lot of freedom to swap classes early on. Try a ton of classes, find what works best for you, and try to stick with it. I'll try my best to work with class changes in order to fit them in the core roster. Try my best, right? Obviously, we can't. I'm not going to be a healer anymore, and we're already hurting for heals, and you want to swap to a rogue. It's like, we can't lose you. I'll try my best. we'll try to work with it and try to make sure everyone can play what they want to play. As for playing Alliance, fuck them. We're not doing it. It's not happening. I know there was a discussion at some point. It's not fucking happening. We will have Alliance alts at some point, I imagine, just to do some stuff with it. I won't discuss the specifics, but we might have Alliance alts, but they would be played without much goal. They won't be like, hey, let's raid on them. Hey, maybe we rank on them. We just kind of fuck around, but don't expect any like, well, we have a core team for Alliance raids. It is never happening, ever. Don't even ask me to do it because I will lose my mind. I'm already doing a lot, and I don't want to add a third core raid team on Alliance. It's not going to happen. Profession requirements. I'm getting towards the end here, guys. I probably have another like 5-6 minutes. Profession requirements. Earlier, I stated, anytime we discover work doing, we will require it, right? The original plan was to require engineering. We are no longer requiring it since there are drastic changes to professions, but doesn't mean that we won't come around and one day say, we are now requiring engineering. It's possible, but we will very strongly try to stay away from requiring people to drop max level professions and swap. We'll try very, 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 put great deal of effort into there to say, don't just drop your max level blacksmith and drop to engineering because we're requiring it. The overall strength gain of the guild would have to be astronomical in order to require that swap to engineering. However, I can clearly state that we should not have any gathering professions on our main. No gathering on your main. This is more important in SOD than in original vanilla now because there are profession required items and recipes being added. Don't make that mistake. Leveling is super easy. We'll have plenty of time for it, and consider putting a gathering profession on an alt unless Blizzard throws in a little bit of a kind of a wrench into the equation and they add bonuses to the gathering professions like they did at some point. I think, I don't know, Wrath or something, like you get 500 health to be mining, some shit like that. I don't know. Maybe it was TBC.
It was Wrath. It was like stamina for mining.
Yeah, something like that. Like there might come a time when it's like, hey, take a look at this. It's 3% crit if you're a miner. Some crazy shit. I doubt that happens, but something like that. It might be like, okay, never mind. You could take that gathering profession. That makes sense. But for the time being, if you haven't seen it, there are already confirmed items that have been, I guess, quote unquote, leaked. I don't know, data mined. I don't know what you want to call it here. That are profession bound. There are epics. Are they epics? I don't really know. Whatever color they were. Yeah, were they epics? They're a bunch of epic items. The gloves, chest. You got to be a blacksmith. You got to be a leather worker. That you can only get, obviously, if you are that profession. So that's why this engineering requirement thing is going to be dropped, because who knows? Like, enchanting alchemy could be amazing. Blacksmith enchanting, or we don't really know. So I imagine they'll add some bonuses to other things like enchanting. It's like, hey, you don't have gear, so why go enchanter, you know? Who knows? We'll see. I'll pick enchanting at the start as I always do, but if there's no bonuses ever added to it, yeah, I'll be dropping it. I have to. But we'll do what we got to do to be the best. Picking the proper race for your class is a must. There is definitely more leeway with this, but DPS warriors, they still max out with Orc, right? It's whether or not they fix weapon skills, that's going to be fact. Berserkin doesn't stand up to it. It just really doesn't. But there's more wrong classes or race class combinations than there are right now. You know, or Tauren Hunter's probably still going to be the worst choice in the end, no matter what, no matter how you look at it. So please do your best to pick the proper race. And if you have one in mind that you're really thinking about, and this is obviously for core members, if you're casual, but you one day want to come to core and you're a Tauren Hunter, you might be declined because of that. So consider picking the right thing regardless. And if you have any questions, like what about this class race combo, hit me up. I'm happy to talk. And if you have anything you want to bring to the table, like here's why I think you should allow this, that's fine. I'm always happy to hear it. A reminder, this is where people disagree. If you run GDKPs at all on an alt, on a character not in a guild, we're G-kicking. We don't want it. We don't want to support it. We don't want it growing on the server. We don't want it being a part of SOD, even though we know it will to some extent. We will do our best to stop GDKPs from being a thing, especially in our guild. We can control what we do in our guild. We don't want it. We're better off without it. And we're in here early on. We don't have a broken economy like we did on Era walking into there where things are a bajillion gold in the auction house. We don't want GDKPs, guys. We really don't like what it does to not even just the server, but even the guild. The guild environment gets affected by it, and it's not cool. Where it's like, hey, I can't help you guys in PvP. I gotta go run my GDKP. You know, we just don't want it. Don't want that type of shit. Definitely don't want it. I hope we can agree on that. I hope that people want to go into SOD and actually play the game to play the damn game and not do that GDKP shit that really fosters botting and gold buying and selling. Fuck that. So let's hit the ground running in SOD. Let's front load all of our work, meaning when you're 25 on 3 characters, you're like, oh, I got nothing to do, and they're not increasing the level cap for another 2 months. Yeah, you got something to do. Farm gold, farm consumes, farm. There's plenty of stuff you can farm early on that lasts you forever. Free action potions can be farmed. You can farm all the mats for early on. That type of shit. Front load as much of your work as possible, because 3 or 4 months down the line, they release some other shit and new level cap, new stuff to do. You have a big batch of stuff. You already kind of, you're like reaching that checkpoint, you know? It's like, all right, I completed the 25 phase. Look how much consumes I gathered. Let me move on to the next batch of consumes, the higher level stuff. It just makes it a lot easier. Just never get complacent with how you are in the game. Where like, oh, I'm gonna play Counter-Strike fucking 40 hours a day and just raid log now. And then, you know, a hard raid releases and we're asking for flasks, and you've been in here day 1 and you're out of flasks like week 2 of the 60 raids. Not good. You want to bust your ass, front load, and let's fuck shit up. I'm excited for this. I'm a lot more excited than I originally was, and I hope you guys are too. I'm ready to fucking kick a lot of fucking ass in this game. I'm going very, very hard. Yeah. I hope you guys will as well. I'm going to stop the recording here, and then we'll do Q&A, and I'll include some nice questions and answers, because if anyone has any important questions, go ahead and throw it at me in Discord, and we'll get to it. Or you can just speak up in Discord. That's cool.